Hello, and welcome back to me drawing fan art of a show whose fan base has abandoned it. There will be spoilers throughout if you have not watched the anime in question, Gosick. You know, at this point, I feel like there's only 10 English-speaking fans of this show, and like only 4 of us make fan art of it. And so, this is my contribution. Recently, like about 2 weeks ago I think, I rewatched the anime, and it still holds up. I really like it. It made me remember why I like it so much, and it's just, the story is beautiful. It's so great. So the idea for this painting was to make a stained glass artwork type of thing, because, well, I'm a sucker for some stained glass. And also there's like this art of our main character in front of a stained glass window. I'll put it up here if I find it. And I saw that back in like 2011 I think, and I really liked it. And back then my art skills weren't quite there yet. But now I can do it. So as with a lot of stained glass, especially like the Catholic ones, stained glass windows sometimes tell a story or have like some kind of scenes depicted in there. For this one, I decided to put in some of my favorite arcs of the show. So we've got on the bottom 4 panels, we've got the Ghost Queenberry ship, then we have the Monster Charmant rabbit with like a big heart on it, very cute. And then next to him we have Monster Charmant herself. And then all the way on the far right, we have a gray wolf. And then on the top part, we have Queen Coco Rose on the left. And then on the right, we have Nicole LaRue. And then in the middle, in Jesus type beat, we have the Alchemist Leviathan. That is my favorite arc, the Alchemist Leviathan. There's so much drama going on in that arc. It's amazing. Now, I can't recommend this show enough. Like, if you like mysteries and gothic settings, then this is the show for you. Now, main characters. We've got Victorica, who belongs to an ancient race of people who are feared by many because of how smart they all are. All of them have blonde hair and green eyes, and they're all kind of like short, sort of doll-like, and that's kind of what creeps people out. I think it's the uncanny valley, but like in a person. So they're all called gray wolves, and she's only half gray wolf on her mom's side. Her dad, on the other hand, is a grade A a-hole who kept her locked up for the majority of her life. Her mom was exiled from the Grey Wolf village for a crime she did not commit, and now she's banned from ever seeing her daughter. So, tragedy. We've got the tragic heroine here. Our second protagonist is Kujo Kazuya, a transfer student from Japan. He is feared by all other students because he really resembles the villain in a horror story, and also racism, because everyone in the academy has blonde hair or brown hair and colored eyes, and Kazuya has black hair and super dark eyes. This boy is one of the nicest guys. He lets himself be pushed around and ordered around by Victorica, and he's fine with it. He does it with a smile. Homie is completely wasted on the respect woman juice. He's the third son of an imperial soldier, but luckily his mom and his sister made sure that the toxic masculinity didn't get to him. We stan. So the story is set in the kingdom of Sauville in the early 1920s. Most of the story happens at their school, which is like this big fancy academy called Saint Marguerite Academy. Everyone there like goes completely bonkers for horror stories. They love their horror stories and fairy tales as well. And fairy tales and horror stories really do play a big part in the plot, because there's always like allusions to different fairy tales and like why they came to be, because they're all based in truth. The first mystery we see is that of the ghost ship, the Queen Berry. No relation to the Queen Mary. No one lives in Long Beach? Anyone? Alright. So this is the first mystery that our protagonists solve, and it's kind of what started their friendship, at least in the anime. In the light novel and manga, it switches it up a bit. The Queen Berry is said to be a ghost ship that rises from the sea every now and then to lure unknowing souls onto it, and then it drowns them once day breaks. So in reality, the ship was made to trap 11 kids from different nationalities and then use them to predict the outcome of World War I. Yes. So in the end, these kids were left stranded on a big ship, and the cabin fever kind of set in, and the kids began to unalive each other. And then once morning came, only 5 of them had survived. And yeah, basically the kids who survived depicted what countries would survive the Great War. Now, as I mentioned, this was the first arc, and I quite liked it. It gave us an intro to Victorica's wellspring of wisdom, as she calls it. Well, in layman's terms, it's basically just her brain and how she sees it, kind of. Like she sees it as a fountain of wisdom. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. You just gotta watch it. But yeah, it also gave us a peek into how committed Kujo is to protecting those around him. Like basically he just met Victorica very recently, and he's already he's ready to throw hands with whoever threatens her. Now, a lot of people think he's a boring protagonist, but I've come to love this character because he kind of proves himself to be very useful in cases. He has like a really good memory, and he's, as I mentioned, he's always willing to throw hands with anyone who threatens his friends. Which, he has 3 friends, but still, he's willing to give his life. A big part of his character is him having this enormous pride over being the 3rd son of a soldier. For him, being a military son isn't about just fighting or guns or being a man's man. For him, it's about being able to protect those who can't protect themselves. And it's it's this kindness and this strength that helps him make friends with Victorica, because this girl is just, before he gets into her life, it's all a mess. Okay? she also changes because of him. At the beginning, she's just this cynical smartass who gets bored easily and who sees other people as just useless dum-dums. And by the end, she realizes that she doesn't want to be alone and that she wants to be Gujo's best friend because she realizes that he has become such a big part of her life. He has become her heart. And that is why I included those two middle panels with the bunny rabbit and then Victorica herself in the middle right. It's from the story within the story called The Charming Monster. It's a fairy tale about a monster who is all-powerful, who has a rabbit companion, and then one day an evil, powerful man who wanted to harness the monster's power, he killed the rabbit because it was trying to protect the monster. And then when they went in to look for the monster was dead because the rabbit was her heart. They might have been two beings, but they had one heart, one soul. And I think that's beautiful. Now, this top part here, it depicts two ladies with near identical faces. On the left, we have Queen Coco Rose, who traveled from France to marry the King of Sauville. They were both happy, but they weren't able to make an heir. So the queen got depressed, and the king, seeing her so sad, built her a castle in the country where she could relax and just chill. So in the countryside, the queen got so much better. Everyone noticed that she was very cheery, almost a different person. Then one fateful day, the queen was found beheaded in her bedroom. This is a case that had happened around 10 years before the setting of the actual story. So that means Victorica is forced to solve this mystery, which by then had already become a cold case, and there was almost no proof left. Now, who's the lady on the right, you may be asking? The lady on the right is Nicole Leroux. She is the doppelganger of the queen. Turns out, Queen Coco in reality was able to give birth to a baby, but once she gave birth, she passed. The king didn't want to face the country, so he found this dancer lady who had a striking resemblance to the queen. He then sent her to the countryside castle, where everyone noted how different the queen seemed. Everything was going hunky-dory until an ambassador of the real queen's home country announced that he was going to visit her. Knowing that an ambassador would know that Nicole Leroux was an imposter, the king decided to behead her and hide the head. That way no one would ever know. This case took Victorica a while to solve. Because one, she was in custody of her a-hole dad and he was forcing her. And two, more than a decade had passed since the murder. And now we get to my favorite arc in the show, the alchemist Leviathan. He is the hooded figure in the middle with his arms out extended. His story was that he came out of nowhere. He always wore a mask, gloves, a large cloak. Then he did some alchemy tricks in front of the king and queen, and this was before she died, so this was Queen Coco. And Leviathan became the king's advisor. Some time passes, and there begins to be some doubt in the king's court. Distrust forms because nobody has seen this man's face, and everyone is very doubtful of alchemy altogether. In the end, Leviathan is imprisoned in his own tower until he can conjure up gold from nothing for the kingdom, or admit that he's a charlatan. So big stakes here. Big. So the next day, the king's general goes to check on the task they left for Leviathan, and he discovers his own son, Ian, dead on the floor with molten gold coming out of his mouth. And Leviathan asks, "Where did the gold I used to kill your son come from, General?" I thought that was like a really raw line. But anyways, he did this and he proved the existence of alchemy. And at the same time, he was attacked by the king's men because, well, he had murdered a kid. And with the last strength he had, he hid himself and no one ever found his body. So, you may be asking, where did the gold come from? From the slave trade. Turns out one of the previous kings used slaves from Africa to transport gold in secret, and then he murdered all of them in mass graves. Except one slave had survived, and since that same year the king passed away, that slave was the only one who knew where all the gold was hidden. He then made that tower his home, and he reinvented himself as Leviathan the Alchemist. Fearing for his motherland, he became an advisor to the king to stop him from taking even more slaves. Along the way, he and the real Queen Coco, remember her, they fell in love. This story ties into the Coco and the Nicole story. Turns out the real queen did in fact give birth to a baby. Except it was a mixed baby. And when the king saw the baby, he killed the queen and replaced her with Nicole. And the rest is history. So the concept of doppelgangers, or like same-faced people, is very prevalent in Gosick. I say this because turns out the Queen and Nicole weren't the only ones twinning around these parts. When the Queen Coco Rose came from France to marry the king, she also brought her personal maid, who was also a blonde, blue-eyed beauty. And that fateful day, in his rage, the king did not realize that he was really killing the queen's maid, who willingly gave her life so that the queen and her baby could survive. At the end of that episode, we are able to see what happened to the real queen and the baby, and they seem to be very happy. Right now I'm really only scratching the surface of what goes on in Gosick. There's a lot of like other little mysteries here and there, and I feel it's very entertaining. I really like it. It's an anime that's like right up my alley. One thing I've always liked about this anime is the opening. It's a beautiful opening. It's done in like this 1920s Art Nouveau style. And it's just, it's beautiful. Like once you finish the anime and you know everything that happens, you go and rewatch the opening, and it's like the opening is telling you everything that happens without telling you. You feel me? It's like subtext. But yeah, it's an opening that I never skip because it's just so beautiful. Even if this video doesn't create new Gosick fans, I hope y'all can at least go watch the opening because it's very pretty. It's aesthetically pleasing, just like the entire anime. I really like how it's animated. It's beautiful. Anyways, let's use the last 2 minutes of the video to talk about the actual art, shall we? So it's at this point here where I'm like doing this motion blur thing when I thought, like in my brain I thought, now that's stained glass. God. Sometimes I feel like a genius, honestly. Ugh. But anyways, I know I haven't mentioned it, but you guys might be wondering why Victorica has wings down there. It's because everyone in the school calls her the Golden Fairy. Because that's also another fairy tale that they have. Well, it's more of a horror story. Because they say that there's a golden fairy who knows everything in the world. But if you want to ask her a question, she will take your soul. So people see Victorica's hair that's all golden and blonde, and they're like, oh shit, that's the Golden Fairy, run away, she's gonna eat your soul. So that's another thing where she can relate to Kujo. Another fun fact that I don't think I mentioned is that the name Gosick is actually meant to mean Gothic. It's just like Gosick is how maybe a Japanese person would say it. The more you know. Now at this point, I'm just kind of tweaking it a lot. I wasn't sure what I was doing here. I was kind of just testing out a bunch of lighting and just seeing what worked. And after around another 20 minutes behind the scenes of fixing it, I came up with this, and I think it's very nice. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I did kind of two versions, one that's like a sunset version and another one that's kind of like a nighttime version. It's a lot more blue. I like both, so I couldn't really decide what to put at the end. Yeah, so we're still in a pandemic, and if any of you guys want some anime to watch, this one isn't really new. It came out like 2011, I believe. It's a good watch. I really recommend it. I think it's the best anime. That's my opinion. Yeah. Wash your hands, stay inside, wear a mask if you have to go out. Stay safe, please. Let's flatten that curve. And well, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.